if you get off to a good start, it's easier to keep going, but than to have to fix. I don't know exactly in what country they say that the boxer who punches first punches twice. I don't know if you ever heard that. But so we got off to a real good start. And I think the reason we got off to a real good start was because several ingredients. But the major one is that by chance, the few of us who were in management positions knew that we had to have zero arrears. We just didn't tolerate arrears. Everything was built around the issue of avoiding arrears. And on top of that, when there was some, we didn't go to collect exactly. We went to find out why there was. And we attributed the arrears to ourselves. We didn't attribute it to the environment or to the clients or to external forces of any kind. So this allowed us to keep fixing, because usually the institution has a lot to do with arrears. So in the beginning, this was our management system. We did everything we could to keep the portfolio as healthy as possible. When this didn't happen, we did everything we could to find out why, to attribute it to ourselves, and then to fix the program. So what happened is that after the initial pilot, the thing became perfect, and we had about 15,000, 16,000 clients before we had to write something off. And in that market niche where we were, and in our efforts to get to the bottom of the social pyramid and all that, it worked. Once more people started to come into the institution, in those days it was called Prodem, Fundación Prodem, because it was a foundation and it was a pilot. They were vaccinated, as we say in Spanish. When they came in, this was entirely clear. There was not something you had to hammer over their heads or anything. It was entirely clear that you couldn't have arrears, and if you had any, you had to find out very quickly. And in fact, after about 5 or 6 months, we made all the installments, all the payments of the loan fall on Monday morning. So Monday afternoon, they could go find out if somebody didn't pay. And on top of that, we could disburse Monday afternoon. So the money never slept, And these little tricks and little details of improving the program, we got because we had a very important we were critical of ourselves, of the way we did things at the beginning. And that helped us fix it. Many programs you go to now, you'll see something that's wrong, and they will attribute it to the government, to the environment, to the competition, to the IFC, whatever. They will never attribute it to themselves, because they don't see that they themselves are managing and running in this, and that they have the power to fix it. I have one fantastic example, which is that, as you know, when we began in '86, we did solidarity groups, guarantees, And one day we faced 4 or 5 groups in arrears, which was, early at the beginning, and we got very scared. And we studied this case. I discovered that it was homeowners, people who own houses, and the people who rented them in the same group. In other words, landlords and, in Spanish you call them inquilinos, I don't know what you call them in English. Landlords and the ones who rented in the same group didn't work. We immediately abolished that, and we never had again that type of arrears. This efficiency became well known, so everybody wanted to be part of it. So that's when, once it got going, it was just a train that you couldn't stop. It was a powerful locomotive. That's more or less the way I see it. Yeah. We happened to have a very valuable board of directors who were bankers, or part-time bankers. Such low arrears, they said this has to be very commercially very viable, because in their banks they were spending a lot of money writing off loans and making provisions. One day in June of '89 in New York City, Martin Connell, who was one of our chief supporters, got together with Fernando Romero, who was president of Prodem. And when I went there, this is actually, I recently wrote about this. When I went to pick Fernando Romero up, they said, it's settled, we're going to make a bank. Because the two of them, when those two heads got together, they came up with this, which was unthinkable. Before this, if it was not a government institution, it was a NGO, even the cajas, the cajas of Central America were still not commercial yet, The idea came out of this strange Saturday morning meeting in a building called the Council of the Las Americas. It must have been middle June 1989. And when they came out of there with this idea, then just all the wheels got rolling, and about a year and a half later, we had a bank. Hardly anybody knows this. Everybody thinks they are the ones who thought this out, but I saw how it happened. It came from them, yeah. Actually, to be honest with you, I think the whole purpose of microfinance is to generate, mobilize, and capture savings. That's why you want people to be prosperous, so they can have money to save. And that's why you want to have regulated institutions, so they can capture the savings. However, at the risk of sounding dogmatic, poor people and peasant people only save in a place that's going to lend them money. So even though I consider myself savings driven, but I understand that first you have to gather their confidence, gain it, and you have to start lending in a very efficient and unbureaucratic way. And little by little, as time goes by, and they realize that this is their institution and it's always going to lend them, then they begin to save in it. That's why we usually lend for a couple of years before we launch the savings product. And by the time we launch it, people are ready to put their money away in the place that lends them. Now, in Bolivia, it's very good, but it's not as good as it looks, because a big part of savings come from huge certificates of deposit. So you will see an institution in Bolivia, one of the 7 or 8 largest ones, you will see that they have maybe like 80 or 90% of their portfolio covered by the savings, which is true. But of those savings, sometimes half, 40%, at least 30% are huge certificates of deposit from companies, local companies, which want to get that extra half a point. But still, there's an enormous amount of very small accounts, savings accounts, which come from the clients once they begin to have some extra cash, and which are the ones that help fund the portfolio as well. And I think it's just a function. The reason it was successful in Bolivia savings is because it's a function of successful lending. Once you lend really well and you create this confidence in the community or in the neighborhood, and people say, well, this place lends to us always, and it's always been here, and I heard they bought this house, then they start depositing. It was amazing when we had a recent civil disturbance in Bolivia. People were protecting the branches of the microfinance institutions. They were burning government buildings, and protecting the branches of microfinance institutions. So it's really indebted into the communities, into the local, let's say, routine and daily life. And you have to arrive at that before people will save. And of course, it's lowered the rates of the cost of funding enormously. It's taking better advantage of the infrastructure, and that's why they are so enormously profitable now, because the rates of interest, as you know, have dropped to less than half of what they were at the beginning of the industry. Sometimes 1/3, less than 1/3 than what they were